Hi, everyone. It is 4 o'clock. Let's see here. Hi, Richard. How are you doing? And Emily Michelle, how are you doing?
Michelle. Hi, Emily Michelle.
I'd like to open up the meeting, at 4 o'clock on, Thursday, June 6th. And I'd like to remind everybody that the meeting is being recorded. Okay? So the first thing on the agenda, Chris, did you want to update us on the state of this particular situation hold on for a second, I go to just read into the record the actual address. It's the Gary Nichols situation, 22 Thomas Hill Road. And
Madam
it has
Chair,
to
do we need a roll call?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, Michelle Keith is present. Emily Michelle?
Present.
Okay, and Richard?
Present.
Okay, there we go. Thank you so much. So I should have said present when I was first addressing you in the beginning. My apologies. So we go to the agenda and we have the 4 o'clock matter, the notification of enforcement for installer Gary Nichols for plat 41, lot 5390 Fisher Road in Dartmouth. So Chris, did you want to give us an update on that?
Sure, thank you. So
Thank you.
this septic system was installed in October of 2023, or I should say was partially or mostly installed in October of 2023. Following that, in February of this year, staff from the health department observed that the system was not properly backfilled. The septic tank was still uncovered. The side slope was still too steep, and there was some erosion. Following that, in February, we issued a notice to Mr. Nichols to complete the system on a certain date, on or before, because in the wintertime, it may not be conducive to installing septic system, to doing the loam and seed. So we gave a little bit more time. And now that we are in June, it is absolutely ridiculous that landscaping wasn't completed in April. And the matter of fact, it's quite common for installers to landscape systems with the finished grade in October. So despite numerous phone calls, staff writing a letter, going out to the site, fielding phone calls from the neighbor about downstream damage from the incompletely graded system, and then us having to hire a constable to serve Mr. Nichols, that's when it finally resulted in Mr. Nichols going out and us receiving a call today that the system was all graded. I've never in my nearly 3 decades with the town seen anything like this, with an installer so distracted from his obligations to complete the installation, despite repeated attempts by us and advisories that we would refer this to the board. So here we are today. We have not given, our full work schedule. We haven't had a chance to go out there.
No.
Irrespective of even if it is disturbing that we've gotten to this point with so much town involvement, town resources being spent on this, only to, when he faces license revocation hearing, does he finally complete the system? Allegedly, we still have to determine that. So, it's really, to me, I don't need to say any more. And I'll turn it back to the chair. Thank you.
Chris, is there any particular action that you'd like to take? Obviously you have to go out there and inspect, but I suppose we have to wait to see if what he's saying is true. Is there any sort of fine, or is there any sort of, we just don't want people doing this again and again in the town. It's very disrespectful.
So I don't know if Mr. Nichols is here and, you'd like to hear from him.
I don't
first
see anybody. I'm looking here. Mr. Nichols, are you here? Is anybody here to represent him? It does not look like anybody is here.
Okay, so the board does have the ability to revoke the license, suspend the license, and revocation can carry for up to 2 years. Mr.
Okay,
Nichols
so-
is aware of this meeting because he did call once he got
Yeah.
the notice and said that he would be sending people out there, which I believe was on Tuesday of this week. So, the board could, I think an action at this point could be is that the board could, undertake full enforcement if they considered revoking and to specify a term. The board could suspend his license until he appears before the board and give us time to verify what's been done. And then at that point, take further action. Or if the board needs to, see further information, as far as looking at our records, going out to the site, the board can take any and all action. If
Chris,
the
what would
board is
be
looking
most
for.
helpful? What would be most helpful for the administration of these issues in the future for our Department of Public Health? What would serve your purposes within the department the best?
Well, I think at this point in time, we got to correct this one situation. If we revise our regs in the future to work with town council to see how we can prevent this from happening again, because as we
Okay.
understand it, this was Mr. Nichols lending out his license, which doesn't absolve him in any way or in any amount from his obligations to the board, which issues this license. So for the time being, I don't know if he's doing a no-show because he feels like he completed the system. And that's why he's not here today. So, if the board would like to table it, but I would only recommend tabling with a suspension that follows to the next meeting. In other words, that he cannot pull any permits until such time that he meets with the board. And we verify that the system's been completed, and then the board can then look for any actions that they feel is relevant
Okay.
for the resources.
Richard, do you have any feedback on this or opinion on this?
I am leaning toward definitely tabling and also yeah, it's something that should have been done a while ago. So and the no-show clearly is of concern. Whether he did or didn't do it, I mean, I think he should show enough respect to show up and kind of let us know, kind of updating and or let us know what's going on and maybe buy it a little time. But I think it's past his time. I am leaning toward tabling it and definitely suspending the license if that's
On
helps the
pulling
town.
additional permits until it's resolved, yeah?
Correct.
Okay, and Emily Michelle, what are your feelings on this? Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I spoke with Chris about it yesterday and some of the benefits, and if Chris hadn't suggested it, I was going to suggest suspending the permit until he meets with us, and then we do something from there.
I was actually surprised that he responded today. I was a bit shocked by that. I'm relieved that he responded to Chris, but that was surprising news for me today that he actually did respond. And it would be interesting to see if he actually has finished the work. I'm a little bit doubtful of that. Chris, when do you think you guys are going to be able to get out there?
We'll be able to get out there before, certainly, I'll try to get out there tomorrow. But given the nature of this, I'd like to stay involved with it. So
Absolutely.
I don't get, and not assign it to, Ariel or Donna,
Okay.
just because of the high level of enforcement. And if I don't get out to it tomorrow, I'm off the following week, so I'd get out there Monday, Tuesday of the, so that'd be like the 17th of the 18th.
When we table this, when do we have to have our meeting by? Within the next 30 days?
Nope, we're not under time constraint.
Okay. Okie dokie. So that's fantastic. So we don't have to make any decision on that. Okay. I'm pretty much in agreement with Emily, Michelle, and Richard about tabling and then putting a suspension on him so that he cannot pull any more permits until this issue is resolved and he appears before the board. So, if we're all in agreement, do you want to make a finding, Emily Michelle?
Yes, finding that there were multiple concerning notifications given to Gary Nichols. I move to table the matter of notice of enforcement for Gary Nichols with the condition that his permit be suspended until such time that he meet with the Board of Health.
Okay, I second that motion. Michelle Keith votes yes. Richard, what is your vote?
I vote yes.
And Emily Michelle, what's your vote?
Yes.
Yes, okay, fantastic. Well, that issue is all set. Let's move on to the next one. It was a 405 appointment for Christopher Gilbert, ELTSC, Farland Corp., Plat 77, Lot 1 to 2, at 870 Fons Corner Road. It's a waiver of 310 CMR 1500 and the Dartmouth supplemental regulations. Chris, did you want to do an update on this?
Sure, thank you. So
Thanks.
this is a repair proposal before the board for a system to be placed in the front yard. The system is kind of surrounded by a U-shaped driveway and Fons Corner Road. They're requesting several waivers under the maximum feasible compliance section of Title V. The first is for a sieve analysis in lieu of a perk test. That area is got a very high water table that once that high water table establishes in November or December of the year, it remains through March and then starts to slowly recede. So given the failed system, they attempted a perk test out here in the wintertime, and they had to retrieve a soil sample for sieve analysis. The sieve analysis policy has been long-standing by Mass DEP and incorporated into the code, and we have not seen any failures as a result of sieve analysis in lieu of perk test. The next waiver that they're proposing is the required separation between the inlet and the outlet of the tanks between the high groundwater to be less than 12 inches. Because of the high water table on this property, trying to meet existing plumbing, and the house kind of nested downhill of the system, it necessitates this waiver. Historically, when this waiver is requested, it's requested with the incorporation of watertight boots being installed at all pipe penetrations. And lastly, the required separation between the bottom of the septic system and the estimated seasonal high groundwater is less than the 4-foot requirement. It's established for 3. And that is because of this system being kind of put in the bullseye between the U-shaped driveway and Fons Corner Road, and the need to keep the system grading. The system is mounded because of the high water table, and because of the mounding, they have to grade out, and they do not have enough room to grade it out additionally if they raise it up a foot, because they cannot grade into the town layout. So that's all I have to say on that. I don't feel as though that this is an excessive waiver request, and that's all.
Okay. Emily Michelle, do you have any thoughts on this?
2 relatively quick questions. The watertight boots, they are called for on this plan. Is that correct, Chris? Or are you recommending we have them as a condition?
Let me just pull that in real quick. I do not see them called out clearly. So
Okay.
if, maybe they're buried in a note somewhere, but I would recommend it.
Okay, so that would be a condition with the motion. Condition that watertight boots. Okay, and then the second one, this is probably more for the engineer. Is you have the infiltrator quick 4 chambers. Do you have the Mass DEP transmittal number for that approval on here somewhere and I missed it?
Sorry, Chris Gilbert from Farland Corp Engineering. I believe I did, but let me take a look real quick. I thought I did, but I'm not seeing it right now. I'll look.
Well, that could I could make it we could make it a condition with the motion. I think it is a good idea for us in general to have the DEP transmittal number when you use either an IA system or an alternative drain field, just for the clarification that anyone would know exactly what approval is being referenced. So long as that's not an issue on your end, I can make that a condition if it's not already on here.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Emily Michelle?
No,
Okay, Richard, do you have any questions?
No, I had the same question about the boots, but that was answered.
Okay, fantastic. Okie dokie, Emily Michelle, would you like to make a finding, make a motion for moving forward on this?
sure. Give me 10
Okay,
seconds.
thanks.
I'm just looking over my notes, make sure I have everything.
I'll catch it. I think we got 2 conditions.
The watertight boots and the transmittal
Yep.
number, correct? Excellent. Okay.
Yep.
Yes. So I move to approve, finding that the sieve analysis is appropriate due to the high water table, finding that the high water table makes meeting the existing plumbing very difficult, and that finding that the system is in particular location that keeps the system grading and it's already mounted and has this additional treatment of the alternative drain field. I move to approve the septic plan for plot 77 lot 1-2 at 870 Fons Corner Road with the following 2 conditions: that a watertight boots be installed and that the transmittal number of the alternative soil absorption system be included on the plan.
Okay, I second that motion. Michelle Keith votes yes. Emily Michelle, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Richard, how do you vote?
Yes.
Fantastic. Now we can move on to the next section of new business, septic plan approval, point A for Hero Engineering LLC, plat 24, lot 6 at 7 Cummings Lane, subsurface sewage disposal plan. Mr. Hero, I see that you're here in the meeting.
Yes.
Chris, did you want to say anything?
Sure. So this is a
Okay.
new construction plan, and that, I'm just trying to drag my mouse over real quick, so just
Okay.
bear with me. Onto the plan. So this is a new construction plan. I forwarded to the board for guidance, so that we can determine, how the board wants us to proceed. In the past, we've had determinations from prior boards when we had a really long system, for example. And if you had, let's say, a 10-foot by 60-foot system, and you ran off 40, 50 feet in one direction, and the test pits were at one end, would the board want additional test pits? So we haven't addressed a situation like this. So let me just kind of back up a little bit. The code has 2 sections. I believe it's 102 and 104. 102.2 maybe, that says that you have to have 2 deep holes, also called soil evaluations, in every disposal area. So that's the primary and the reserve. You
Okay.
also have to have a perk test in each disposal area, the primary and the reserve. So
Mhm.
the one of the 2 deep holes usually has the perk test tied to it. And you end up with 104 requiring a perk test in each of the disposal areas. So you have a perk test with its accompanying deep hole and another deep hole in the primary, and the same thing being replicated in the reserve areas. With this plan here, we have somewhat of a straddling of the test pits, because test pits 5 and test pit 6 are the 2 test pits that were tested for soil suitability, for permeability. Those have the soil evaluations. So both systems have the appropriate number of soil evaluations. The question here is, does test pit 5, as it kind of sits sharing between the primary and the reserve, satisfy the board with compliance with 104, 310 CMR 15104, that each one has its own perk test?
So Chris, you mentioned the board's decisions in the past. Was it greater than 40 feet, less than 40 feet? Is there any sort of guidance as
No,
to?
the board relied on us to forward any plans
Okay,
back to them when we were uncertain if, we were kind of just, so what happens is when we go out there, we were in the woods. The engineers, the soil evaluators lay out the perk test as best they can with where the owner thinks they want to build their house. And then then after that, they go to the architect, and the architect starts playing around and tweaking and grading and whatnot. And then the engineer is going to try to work with what they did out there. So that's how sometimes we end up with these situations where this is the house I want to build on the lot that's already been perked. And the work that came first, which was the soil suitability, the perk test and the soil evaluations, is now coming in last after the architects have got their hands on it.
so Chris, what I don't understand is why would they do the test pits, the primary and the reserve so close? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, why would they choose 5 and 6?
You know,
Okay,
I guess I'm a little bit of an old timer, and I say that, I realize why regulations are the way they are, but we had a tool hole requirement at one point in time, and we always had
Okay.
the flexibility to require more holes if we felt as though more were needed to adequately characterize. Then around 2006, the state required the 4 holes. And it just seems like, the more holes that we get now on these single family dwellings, sometimes it can be complicating it for the placement of a system to try to make this all work.
But I want to make sure I understand this. We only have 2 holes on this one, though.
No, we have
True?
4.
Okay, we have 4. Okay. So
Yeah,
Mr.
we have
Haro,
the right number. It's just if we assign test pit 5, if you're looking at the plan, and if we assign test pit 5 as being the perk test for the primary, does then one argue, it's Title 5, that's the problem with regulations. Sometimes you get into these really unique situations that requires, further interpretation beyond the words or discretion, or do you just hold to the hard line of the wording in the regulations?
so the 4 holes that we do have, do they meet the statutory requirements, Chris?
That's the question I have for the board. I can make an argument that the primary has 3 holes in it, but then if I assign test pit 5 to the primary system, then one could one say, if we were in an adversarial situation down the line, well, then if you said those 3 holes assigned to the primary, then does that mean that you only had 1 for the reserve?
But we only need to have 1 for the reserve, true? I just, one more second, Mr. Haro.
We have to have 2.
Chris? We have to have 2 for the reserve?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, okay, okay. Okay, Mr. Haro, what would you like to say? I know, I'm sure you
Can
have
I-
explanations.
Yeah, can I share my screen and try to
Sure.
explain?
Donna,
Okay.
can you give him the, thanks.
Can you see that?
It's tiny, but
Yes.
we.
Oh,
you
let me
walk us through, yeah.
enlarge it.
Okay, thanks.
So I'll enlarge it a little more. I just wanted to,
Yeah.
I wanted to just show you first that
Okay.
in the upper right-hand corner here are the 4 test pit logs.
Okay,
And all of the soil was loamy sand and medium sands, very consistent. And let me just, as Chris mentioned, that when we were out there, there are trees. This was a wooded lot, and there's been some clearing. Now, there are no wetlands on this property. It's a 2.4 acre piece of property. And a previous engineer had, when they were selling the lot, done some perk tests in this area here where I have my cursor, where the 6.8 spot elevation in the driveway is. And the elevation in this vicinity is around 63 based on the benchmark on the property.
Mhm.
What I wanted to do was do the test bits to determine soil suitability for a septic system about 7 or 8 feet lower on the land. So that because there is it's funny, these soils, how they're sandy. I mean, this is sandy soil, 1.2" perk tests, and the other engineer got 1.2" perk tests. Yet the water table is perched based on the soil evaluation done by Jim Walsh. So we have a shallow water table. So that's why I wanted to move the system downhill on the lot. So I wanted to get the septic system downhill on the lot, thinking we would put the house up here higher on the lot, which is what we ended up essentially doing. But the client wanted a detached garage here, and so I had to push the house a little further to the south. And basically the septic system then became alongside of the house. So these are the 4 test pits here. Okay, there's 4 test pits that I show. And my client wanted to move the house to the west as far as we could. So I've got a 20-foot setback to the system, and I've got a 14-foot wide by 43-foot long leaching area for the primary system. And then the reserve area is right here, immediately south of the primary area. So there are 2 soil evaluations and a perk test in both locations of the primary and reserve area. So the locus, just in case you know, right here is the intersection of Rockadundee, Potomska, and Gaffney Road. It's just up the hill, up Potomska Road. So let me just show you one more thing that maybe will give it some perspective. Maybe. I wanted to let's see. Hold on a second. So this is me standing in a perk hole. And you can see how big these test pits are. You've got a deep hole. This one happens to be on Salters Point. And on the left is a picture of a leaching field. And that one happens to be 20 feet wide, 3 distribution pipes, just like I'm showing, about the same length. But this is what a leaching field looks like with a 5-foot overdig all around it of sand. But on the right is a picture of me doing a perk test on Salters Point. So you dig a hole 10 feet deep, put a ramp in that hole so you can classify the soil horizons, and then you peel back the topsoil and subsoil, and you put a hole in the ground and you pour water in it and you measure the perk rate. So you can see the size of these excavations. And last week, I did another one on Salters Point at the end of Gaffney Road. And you can see that these excavation areas, what happens is we dig these holes, and then the holes get backfilled on that day. And then the survey crew comes back and locates the test pits, and they locate an area of disturbance. I put a stake in the ground approximately where I believe we did the perk test, and approximately in the center of where we did the excavation. But this is a big area of excavation. So I just wanted to share that with you, because I just think that we have on this plan put this primary area and the reserve area over the test pits. And that's always been essentially the requirement. On this lot, the other engineers' 4 holes and my 4 holes indicate it's a very, very suitable soils, sandy soils, medium sands. And the primary area certainly has, it's got 2 holes in the area, and the 3rd hole straddling the primary and the reserve, and the reserve area more than likely will never be used. But if it is, this is the best place for the reserve area. The other holes are within the other thing. The other holes are within the 100-foot radius of the well. And that was another thing I wanted to just point out real quickly, is that the plumbing in the house, most of the plumbing is on the north side of the house. So we have the well. I was always under the impression there was a 15-foot setback from the property line in Dartmouth, but I'm not 100% sure that's the case. I always thought it was. But so we've got the well here, more than 100 feet from the primary leaching field. We've got a water line that comes into the north side of the house, building sewer that goes out of the north side of the house, 1,500-gallon septic tank to the leaching field. And you can see that these 2 test pits are over the reserve area, and these two test pits and this one here is straddling the primary and the reserve. But I've tested this whole area to show that there's suitable soil for an on-site sewage disposal system. So the bottom line for me, I just wanted to point out that the plan is dated February 14th, revised through May 15th, 2024. And I believe it's designed in accordance with the state environmental code and the Board of Health supplemental regulations, and be happy to answer your questions.
Emily Michelle, do you have any questions?
Not a question. I know how I feel about this.
Okay, do you want to express your thoughts?
Yeah, this is new construction. It's not a repair. So, you know, you have a lot more leeway when you have a lot stricter requirements when you have new construction. I absolutely see Chris's point about this being unclear, and I don't think we should accept it as it is because of that lack of clarity.
What
Okay,
is
any
not
other thoughts?
unclear? What is
Wait,
not
let-
unclear?
Well, hold on for a second, Mr. Hero. I'll come back
Yeah.
to you. Emily Michelle, any other thoughts?
No, we don't want to set a precedent with new construction. It's really important, I think, to be strict with it.
Okay. Richard, do you have any thoughts?
I do agree that there's new construction, and you know it's not a rebuild or anything like that. So it's they can have a little bit more access or ability to kind of move it or adjust it to with town accordance.
Okay, and
So can
hold
I
on
ask a
for one,
question?
hold on for one more second.
Okay.
Chris, with reference to this fourth hole, where would it have to be to meet the requirement?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, you try to, write regulations, and then situations arise, and, it's, where does this fit, in the spectrum of, the regulations try to be black and white, yes and no, and it is, the reality is a spectrum. So, if this was looked at very rigidly, where, you have to have, because there are 2 soil evaluations without perk tests in the primary, and that you're going to apply test pit 5 as being the perk test in the primary, the question arises that, do you have adequate test holes in the reserve area? Because you would then solely be relying on the perk test with its soil evaluation number 6 in the reserve. And the code doesn't talk about straddling or sharing. You would then need, if you took the literal interpretation, you would then need an additional soil evaluation along the edge of the reserve area to satisfy. What I would say is that at times when we face situations where the board was leaning towards additional test pits, when we're this advanced, they required a test pit they allowed for a test pit they approved the plan conditioned on a test pit being done, at some point in time. So, I'm very familiar with this land formation, but, we've got to remember that the future and not knowing where we are with, how things pan out years later.
Okay, my next question is, the data that we have right now, does it meet the requirements and the intent of the regulation? Does it give us the information that the regulation is looking, wants us to identify?
I can go 50-50 on that. And then if you want it, otherwise I'd be getting personal on it. And I've got to report to the board on,
No, I'm asking you this question because, obviously it's not a perfect world. Okay. And regulations, when they are read too strictly, can impede, the intent of those regulations. So that was my question. Mr. Hero, what were the things that you wanted to say?
I just wanted to ask if Emily was asking for and Chris are asking for another soil evaluation down where my cursor, you know, in the reserve area. Is that what you're getting at, Chris? Is that because I could,
Well,
if
I'm
you
just
were
saying that
if you were willing
if
to
there is a
witness
little,
it, you know, I could get,
if
we
there's a
could do
literal,
that. I mean, but you know, I guess my feeling is we've dug plenty of holes and we're not trying to get away with anything. It's all very consistent material out there, but you know, and these things, you put these little symbols on the plan. Those symbols are not even as big as what the area that we dug up probably, but you know what? Here we are. So I just want to know what I need to tell my client I need to do. If we need to dig another hole and do another soil evaluation in the reserve area, I'm just looking for some guidance on that.
Chris, do you have any sort of guidance first, and then we'll go to Emily Michelle?
yeah, if the situation is looked at one side of the 50-50, you know, where, you know, you want to make sure that we're covered in the future should anything go wrong and we are facing an adversarial party, an additional soil evaluation would cover the town's interest with cleanly meeting, you know, the black and the white of the print in the code.
Okie dokie. Emily Michelle, what are your any
Yeah.
thoughts?
Nope, Chris had pretty much exactly what I was thinking. Another test hole, yeah.
I just hate, you know, adding additional expense for homeowners and folks, you know, we've all been in that situation. It's very, very expensive. And it really pains me to put that burden on the homeowner. But it seems that, you know, part of our responsibility is also to protect the town too. So, I mean, unfortunately, and I really hate to do this, Jim said, because I think that boards of health should be, you know, obviously upholding regulations, but really try their best to be in tune with the struggles of the residents and the homeowners and the expenses that folks have to endure. So, I mean,
Could we do the test hole when we put the septic in, and while the excavator's there, do another test pit to the south, and we could always relocate
Chris, is that,
it's not the primary area, it's a reserve area. We've got 2.4 acres of land. If necessary, we could, but I'm confident we're not going to find different dirt. So, you know, but could
Yeah.
we do the excavate another observation hole further south when
Chris, is that an
Fortier, I
option?
think Chris is going to build it, so.
Chris, is that an option? I think you said earlier that that was something that we could condition.
So yeah, we could do it, but Alan, could we do it when they do the foundation and just get it over with? So if there was some sort of an unforeseen problem, then, you know, we could make adjustments at the time.
I think on this one, Chris, I'm working with Chris Fortier. I think on this one, he wants to put the leaching bed in for, I mean,
Deal.
you know, he could go out there and dig the hole before, you know, do the soil observation at this, you know, before he digs the hole for the septic, but at least, you know, the plan would be approved conditional on that. You know, so basically he's there to do work with his machine. We could
And
pop
it
a
saves
hole.
money. It's,
We'd
yeah, it
pop
saves
a
money.
hole,
for-
do a soil evaluation, satisfy you, and then he'd excavate the septic. Because of the location of the septic, I think he wants to put the field in first and then work his way back out to the house.
That would be ideal. And,
Yeah.
you know, just so the board knows that if by some chance that there was some sort of issue that arose, it would void, if we found something that was different. Any conditions that are found that are different than are represented on the disposal works construction permit, which includes the design plan, does void the plan and we have to start over again. And then, you know, by Alan saying that the installer wants to do this aspect of the work first, you know, that could be a condition that the system go in before the foundation.
That's fine with me.
Okay.
Madam
So,
Chair,
yes, I'm right here.
I do see that there is a hand raised with a person by the name of Walsh, which does match the last name of the application.
Oh, hi, I'm sorry about that. Let's see here, is Mr. or Mrs. Walsh?
Yeah, hi, good evening. This is Peter Walsh.
Hi,
Uh,
Peter.
Hi. Just looking to see if this might help resolve any kind of issue or situation that seems to be here. The test pits and the reserve, what if we just moved the system to the east 2, 3, 4 more feet? Would that cover the bases?
I would want,
Chris?
well, the first thing is by moving it to the east, I would assume that's moving it towards the house.
Correct.
And the problem with that is that you would then have to shift your house because you have the minimum setback between the septic system and the house of 20 feet.
Yeah, I understand that, but we can move the house, you know.
And the other thing to consider is that's gonna, trigger a whole new redesign by Alan. And
Yeah.
if,
Yeah, no, I don't want to do that.
if, if a condition plan for the additional soil evaluation is possible, I think that's going to be a lot less disruptive to the engineering.
Okay, yeah, just wondering which one would be easier, I guess a test pit or just moving things over on paper a couple feet.
So,
But
Chris,
the
I
rest of the,
just want to, go ahead.
but the rest of the rest of the system looks fine, just looking to do a new perk test.
A new soil evaluation, Peter,
Yes,
not a perk test, just a soil evaluation
Oh, okay,
in the reserve area.
in the reserve area.
okay.
Okay,
you.
so Chris, thank you so much. Mr. Walsh, did you have anything else that you wanted to say?
No, that's it, thanks.
Just want to make sure. Okay, good. Sorry. Thank you, Chris, for giving me the heads up on that. I didn't see that. So Chris, this would be okay for us to approve this plan with the conditions that the additional soil evaluation is done in the reserve area before the foundation goes in?
The applicant has offered that, so that is fine.
And okay, so that would meet any of your concerns?
Yes.
Okay, Emily, Michelle, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Michelle, you hit it right. I think you took the exact words I had written down for the condition.
Okay, good, good, good. I am an attorney, but I know that you do enjoy doing the findings, so.
I'm a stickler for
and-
details, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, that's fantastic. So you have no more thoughts. And Richard, what about you?
No, I'm in good shape.
Okay, this is fantastic because I think that, we're threading the needle here, which is hard to do sometimes. So Emily, did you want to make a motion with a finding?
Sure. So finding that the engineer has, acknowledged that he'll meet our request, I approve the septic plan for Plat 24, Lot 6 at 7 Cummings Lane with the condition that another test pit be done in the reserve area before the foundation goes in.
So do we have to clarify test pit soil evaluation, or is test pit enough?
Deep hole
Chris?
soil evaluation.
Okay. Okie dokie. I second the motion. Michelle Keith votes yes. Emily, Michelle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, and Richard, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Fantastic. Thank you. I hope Mr. Walsh and Mr. Hero that everything goes smoothly.
Thank you very much for your
Thank
help.
you. Take care. Take care. Okie dokie. Okay, let's see here. What do we get next? We've got the minutes of the May 16th meeting. Does anybody have any corrections or comments or anything that we need to address on that? Okie dokie. Could I have a motion to accept those minutes of May 16th, 2024?
I move to approve the minutes of Thursday, May 16th, 2024 for the Board of Health.
I second that.
Fantastic. Fantastic. That's great. Michelle Keith votes yes. Emily, Michelle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. And Richard, how do you vote?
Yes.
Great. Okay, now we're going on to the next thing. Information and amendment to the land use development regulations. Okie dokie. Chris, can we have an update on this?
Sure, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So the town of Dartmouth Board of Health has land development reuse regulations. Those regulations go back to about 2018, maybe even, a year before. Those regulations were put in place by the Dartmouth Board of Health to address a emerging trend in the real estate world due to Dartmouth becoming built out. By built out, I mean that we have little available land left for housing. So developers were looking to unconventional areas that have been previously not looked at. For example, looking at junkyards not in our residential districts and turning those into house lots.
Mhm.
The concern by the board at the time was that that junkyard and a number of other listed uses in the existing regs may have been fine for occupational exposure, but that long-term use of that land for a junkyard, a firing range, contractor's yard, and many other industries could potentially leave impacts in the environment that could pose risk with the conversion to a high-risk use. And it's not just residential, we also list daycares, playgrounds, for example, and a few others. So recently, a situation arose where we started looking at lumber yards, and not lumber yards, sawmills, wood storage areas. And in talking with industry professionals, we saw risk with those land uses with potential impacts to the environment. I can list that lumber yards or wood storage areas, sawmills, can create issues in the environment from the handling of pressure treated woods, or even just clean wood chips themselves in certain situations can create compounds in the environment that are regulated by the Mass Contingency Plan as a hazardous waste. Those compounds are acetone and methyl ethyl ketone. The other
I'm
item,
impressed you can say that. That's impressive.
the other concern, as we started to
a
think
hard
of
one.
our local regs and all the listed uses, that we don't include a business that would store pesticides and herbicides in bulk for wholesale or retail purposes. I do believe that it's important to include those just because of the very nature of the chemicals themselves. And if it's stored in bulk, there can be a risk. The next item is sludge. Now, what sludge is it's defined by a set of regulations that Mass DEP has. I believe it's 310 CMR 3200. And those are biosolids that result from wastewater treatment plants. It can be an industrial wastewater or a sanitary wastewater. We know that the state of Maine is struggling with the large-scale acceptance of sludge materials from those forever compounds. And we know that we have sludge that has moved around the state. We know that sludge has arrived here in Dartmouth. And if we're going to be converting those lands that accepted sludge or handled sludge, in my opinion, it would be important to make sure that that property undergoes an environmental site assessment as well, knowing those potential constituents. While we're on the subject of the forever compounds, we know that, if a fire station was converting because they were selling off land, we don't know if they used some of those firefighting compounds historically that have those forever compounds. So again, we would want to make sure that any sale of a fire station property would include an ESA. And lastly, the handling of catch basin cleanings. Catch basin cleanings are problematic because they contain all sorts of metals. And that's one of the reasons why we pull them out of the sump of catch basins. But they're very tough to characterize. But any property that would be filled with them or handled them for some sort of subsequent use under the Mass DEP catch basin cleaning policy, I would be concerned with the metals and also any petroleum hydrocarbons that often get trapped in the organics in the catch basin. So, I wanted to bring these 6 items to the board's attention to see what the board's interest is in amending our regs. And if there is an interest, then we would put it on a subsequent agenda for consideration.
So would you be sending it to town council, Chris?
Because we're just going to be putting in these items, it would not need town council review because we're not going to change any of the other content.
Okay, good, good. Okay, and so how many meetings do we have? How many meetings out are we before we would actually be at a point where we could add these?
So we could add this to our July meeting. It doesn't,
Oh, okay, fantastic.
as long as it appears on the agenda as a hearing, and then
Okay.
following that, it's posted in the newspaper. It then
Okay.
thereafter.
Okay. Emily, Michelle, do you have any thoughts on this?
I spoke with Chris about this. I certainly defer to his judgment, and he gave, sound logic again today. I support this decision to add them in.
Thank you. Richard, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I feel the same way.
I think these are, Chris, thank you so much for your diligence.
Yeah.
The town is very, very lucky to have you. Could we have do we have to have a motion on this?
We don't need a motion on this as
Yeah,
long as
okay.
I've got a consensus of the board's feelings that
Okay.
I'll watch ahead and,
Yep.
get this ready for the next agenda.
I agree. I think that your diligence is, I extremely appreciate your diligence in protecting the folks of our town. So, okay, that's looks like we can go forward on that and hopefully get that on the July agenda. And now we are going to item D, a new business waiver and variance policy, Title V and Dartmouth Board of Health supplemental regulations. Chris, did you want to update us on this?
Sure. So this item was put on the agenda just to see if the board wanted to provide any guidance to designers when considering some of the common waivers that we see since Dartmouth, relies on wells, has has large areas of poorly drained soils, in other words, high water tables. And hand in hand with high water tables, we have a lot of wetlands, a tremendous amount of wetlands. So it's very common for us to face these waiver requests. And the complexity lies is that we have a local regulation that increases the setback from 50 feet to 100 feet on wells. So while someone may be in full compliance with a setback to a wetland with the state, they are needing a waiver from us. So I did kind of, in my write-up, kind of segregate things. It can get a little bit confusing, but that's just us on the technical side having to kind of separate that out between state and local. Because what will happen is if you combine a water table and a wetland setback or a wetland and wells, that can trigger additional requirements on how the application is handled. In some cases, kicking it into what's called a variance application.
Okay.
So, anything that, I put this item on the agenda so that the board could have a discussion as to what, the board members may be looking for, or if they just want to keep it open-ended on an application by application basis.
What would be more useful for our Department of Public Health?
Well, I push this back to the board, because,
Chris, I'm not the one making I'm not the one dealing with the reality, I'm saying, of this decision. Is it better to add these? Does it make your workflow, more well identified and help with the communication? Is it better to leave it open-ended? How is it going to affect the workload? You guys do an incredible amount. You're understaffed. And the last thing I want to do is make a regulation that's going to increase the work for you and your staff. We want to make.
It may not increase the work. It may provide, if there were situations where, where the board may be looking for more from the applicant than the minimum, it may provide for
More guidance,
to the designer.
which ultimately would help the department because people would have more information up front.
Yes.
Okay. Emily, Michelle, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I'll be quick. The first one, so one example is I highly recommend that for every IA system or alternative SAS that they have the transmittal number on there. So that could be like a common example of something where they know that that's the expectation, and it saves everybody time if they just come in with that on the plan. With this, what I was gonna suggest is I do want to put a lot of thought into this. My background is in septic. And I have a lot of thoughts, but I want to organize them. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you folks may not be from a septic background. And so I want to just organize thoughts. Well, it can be
I'm not from a rooster background either, but I've learned a lot about
Yeah.
roosters. Yeah.
No, that's fair. Well, I guess so. I'm almost 10 years in now, and I'm constantly learning stuff. And
Well,
so
we're
at any rate-
thankful that you're here. I'm thankful that you're here.
So at any rate, what I want to say is I want to organize my thoughts. It's going to take me a little bit more time in between, not offending Chris's staff at all, but between Monday and now to have done that. So I want time to organize it and make it as concise as possible, and then come back to you with the ideas I at least have.
Okay. Richard, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, well, I was kind of leaning to the application per application basis, but I think some guidelines I think would be beneficial to begin with, and I'm new to the septic community, and so yeah, the more information I have, a better answer or whatever, I guess.
And I mean, I'm all for anything that is going to help our Department of Public Health, operate in a more efficient way. And sometimes people having information up front makes sense. So, and I'm very grateful that we have the benefit of your expertise, Emily Michelle. Chris, do we need to table this to the next meeting until Emily Michelle can get her thoughts together, or you want the meeting after that, Emily Michelle? What would be ideal for you?
I mean, if we can, let's say I'm down to aim for July, and then if we need a little bit more time to touch base again with Chris to wait until August, but unless we need something,
we can just, Chris, do you need this in July?
This can just go on as an old business item
Okay.
after this meeting,
Okay.
and then when we're ready to address it, it can get finalized in old business at any meeting thereafter.
Emily Michelle, I mean, I'll leave it to you to let us know when you'd like it, but I mean, it's the summertime, and when we all have very busy lives. So, I mean, if this is something that you want to wait till September to address, we certainly can do that.
Well, how about that? Well, if I'm understanding Chris, let's keep it as old business, and I'm going to work on it, as I'm able. But I'm gonna aim for sooner rather than later, because if you kick it too far, it's just going to procrasticate. So thank you. Yeah.
Okay. But we only have like 12 weeks of good weather, and it's
This is
really
true.
important to enjoy that,
I'll make sure I get some outdoor time. I promise.
Okay. So, Chris, do we need to I don't think we need to make any motions on this.
You do not. It's not
Okay.
it's not an actionable item at this time.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so we can move on from this and go to E, which is the draft Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection Pathogen and Waterway Plan. Chris, where do we stand with this?
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
Mass DEP has a public hearing next week. It's going to be a hybrid, so it will be both in person in Lakeville and also a remote option. It is between 1 and 3 p.m. in Lakeville on Thursday. We will be working with DCTV to get the notice of public hearing out to the public through DCTV and other outlets.
And what's the date again? The 10th?
13.
Was it the 13th? Okay. Okay, so it's June 13th, 1 to 3 p.m. So it's a hearing. And is there any particular deadline on written comments with reference to this hearing?
Yeah, I believe, this one that you put me on the spot with that one. I think
I'm sorry.
it might be the 21st, but we'll be putting that
Okay.
out to the public as well.
Okay. Okay.
The
And
reason,
now, are you going to attend it in person, Chris?
unfortunately, I will not be able to, so I'm going to
Okay.
work with DCTV to try to get a pre-recorded 3-minute clip, 2 minutes and 59 seconds. And then
Okay.
they're going to dial me, they're going to dial in and then record and let my recording go as though I am attending.
Excellent. Excellent.
I won't be in an area with coverage. But But, just for a little bit of background for, the other members and anybody in the public that may listen to this meeting after, this draft plan is an important plan for the town of Dartmouth. Unfortunately, we're not being given a lot of time, and even though Mass DEP did give us an extension, I still think it's adequate. It is inadequate and insufficient for true stakeholder participation. This should concern us because it notes that the Pascamanskett River is pathogen impaired. The Pascamanskett River flows through our largest aquifer, Zone 2, where we have our two most significant well fields. Those well fields are rigorously tested and scrutinized by Mass DEP. They have to do raw water testing, and they have to do testing on the treated water. But any amount of pathogens that are exceeding the Mass clean water standards is concerning, because we need to protect our aquifer, because protecting our aquifer protects our drinking water wells. And why the town should be given more time, and we should be notifying stakeholders and having sit downs internally as a town, as a team of planning, Board of Health, Conservation, Board of Public Works, Select Board, is that, we're racing to try to create more new growth. How do we create affordable housing? How do we create more usability of land? And the problem is that is all consequential and dovetails into this and becomes part of the problem. Because as we increase impervious area, we flow more water across the land, we increase the velocity of the Pascamanskett River, we lose its ability to attenuate pollutants. And if Mass DEP races ahead and approves this plan, we're not going to get the same public interest once this plan approves as you do when there's broader public participation on the state level. And it's going to become another study that we put on the shelf, like the Slocum River Watershed TMDL, that was approved in 2018, that was heard in 2018 by DEP. And it sat there until the CLF sued the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And then they wanted to assemble these all into a set of very highly consequential regulations that were, pitting the town against the people. I'm afraid that, this is like 2.0 of that all over again. We're going to put this on the shelf and create the evidence for which the CLF can then sue the state all over again, because this document here at this point in time is nothing more than a, do this, but you don't have to. You should do this, but you don't have to. And there's many reasons why we should, but because this is going to impact people's private properties, business properties, and affect us as a whole, how else are we to get the public's interest? If we can't engage them in the beginning with this plan, why do we think we're going to be more successful after the plan is adopted?
Chris, I'm wondering, if this plan goes forward without the appropriate input, basically what it's going to be setting up is a testing mechanism to collect data. But not necessarily any sort of prevention methods.
What they do is they give you a broad set of possible sources of pollution.
Okay.
But they don't require anything. It's just like, here's the problem. Here's the problem. This is where it could be resulting from. And then that's it. That's it. And that's not right. That is really, once we identify a problem, we have an obligation to go after it, especially one that has a health implication. This is not about recreational water use, in my opinion. This is about protection of our aquifer.
But right now, as it stands, is it going to change the current testing that we're doing on this particular waterway?
So that's interesting. This document establishes two waterways in Dartmouth, both the Pascamanskett and Shingle Island, as being impaired by pathogens. The designation as impaired results from 5 tests in 1 year and 6 tests in another year. Those years were 2005 and 2013.
Okay,
There's been no other listed tests by Mass DEP in the document in the 11 years following 2000.
do we have any tests? Have we done anything?
We started doing tests once we discovered this initiative of Mass DEP. And we actually were pulling samples again today. We're still in the very infancy of testing. And that becomes a problem because to really try to solve problems, you have to get very comprehensive. And with comprehensive comes, a lot of expenses. I'm not worried so much about the expenses because we shouldn't put costs ahead of public health. But it's going to take some time to look at.
So the other thing I'm interested in knowing is, so say they put this plan in and it turns out that our testing results are getting worse and worse and worse. What are the ramifications for the town? Obviously, it's bad for health. But what are the legal ramifications, or what are the ramifications for the town as far as fines or the DEP coming after the town? How is it going to affect homeowners, business owners? What are the things that, would be affecting us economically based on a failure to improve the water condition? Or to
Well,
at least leave the water.
you would have to assign who is responsible for that source of pollution, and then so is pollution sourcing from something that is within the town's control, regulatory regime, or is it something? So, like, let's say we had all these overflowing septic systems, and we were just sitting on our hands with them. Then we would be in a bind, because the law requires us and DEP to pursue that to correction. Now, if you have a point source discharge from an agricultural feedlot, that's something that we have zero control over. Only Mass DEP has control over that. So that's just kind of a splitting of the assignment of who's responsible. But if it can't be pinpointed, I don't know how you go after anyone. If you've got private property with stormwater, that gets into, is it point source, non-point source? So it's a very complicated situation. But, I don't want to wait to find out any of those answers.
Okay, so how can we get the ordinary person in Dartmouth to be concerned about this? You know what I'm saying? Like, other than like they want their water to be clean, like if somebody's going to make a comment and attend the public hearing, like how do we frame it? How do we explain, what are the issues that the general person in the public should be paying attention to and should be concerned about?
Well, I think, given the abruptness of this,
obviously, that.
I don't think we should expect the public to be able to adequately express themselves. I think what they, if they are concerned about the results that are posted in this document and would have liked more opportunity to engage with the state with Q&A sessions like we had for the Slocum River TMDL, they had a meeting right here at the town hall. And they allowed the public to come. We set up the select board meeting room. The meeting room was 3/4 full, and there were, stakeholders, and there were, those stakeholders were both public and private interests and residents as well. So, I think that the best thing that the public can do is, if they attend the public hearing, to express that they need more time, and that time is going to require participation with Mass DEP to help them, understand what all of this means.
Yes.
And not just rush through this and, hurry up like we're facing some sort of court-ordered settlement agreement or some settlement agreement between the Commonwealth and a litigation firm. Let's take our time with this so that people can understand what this is. I don't expect anyone to understand it. I do think that people should be concerned about it, and they really need to express it. So if any of the board members know anyone, have any ideas, want to help spread the word once we get that notice out on DCTV, that's important.
Could you make sure that we get that link to the notice or the information on the notice via email, Chris, so that we can share it on social media and within our networks?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. And I mean, I will go to the hearing and I will express my concern over the fact that we really need to have some more time, so like you just said, so that we can have some more participation and folks have a chance to actually understand what all of this means, health-wise and economically, for homeowners and businesses, as far as, how this will affect us in the future.
You could always hold signs up at UMass Dartmouth on July 11th on the Ring Road because the commissioner DEP is going to be entering the UMass for a talk.
Oh, really? I'll have to look into that.
Maybe we
July
can
11th.
Maybe I can talk the police into putting one of the mobile signboards that we need more time.
Yes, that would be fantastic, Chris. That would be wonderful. I mean, that's a way of getting out the word for that the meeting's coming up. You know what I'm saying? And that, I mean, I would
I'll have to
basically-
talk to, I'll have to talk to, a lot of the, internal team here because,
Yeah. Do you need a vote from the board as to whether or not we would agree with that?
No, because
Okay.
I have to have some talks because I don't want to
Okay.
create. It would be a well-intentioned, but I
No,
know that
it's-
having had one extension already, I know that the commissioner is aware that we want more time, and unfortunately, what she gave is laughable.
What, 10 days?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, here, you want something, I'll throw you a crumb.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think getting the word out is the best we can do on this right now, and certainly asking for more time doesn't hurt. And
Yeah.
having that on the record that we asked for more time so that, the stakeholders could be able to formulate and educate themselves, formulate their opinions and on based on, correct data and correct information.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I did a records request on DEP, and they were like, well, I asked for the testing data because I want to see the data, and I want to see the chain of custodies because I need to make sure that let's look at these chain of custodies to make sure that 17,000 colony forming units is alarming in any
Mhm.
water.
Was that 2013?
That was in 2013 on the Pascamanskett. So I asked
Okay,
for
yeah.
inventory data, and they told me, oh, it's going to cost you $300 and something. And I'm like, well, that's the equivalent of about 10 to 12 hours worth of work. So you're telling me you can't find this and it's going to take 10 to 12 hours to find it?
Wow.
How do you not have that in your back pocket when this is the foundation to the whole document? And you should have been prepared that someone would say, we want to see the data.
Yeah, and
so now
it doesn't make any sense to have data and collect data and not have the chain of custody accurately and easily accessible.
Yeah, so I narrowed it down to say, I just want 2 days in 2013.
Okay.
And they're saying, oh yeah, we can do that without a fee. So my next response going to be is, if you can do that without a fee, then why, if you can find 2 out of 5 days without a fee, then all the others should be right at your fingertips. Because why would you have all of your data scattered helter-skelter all over, some DEP office building?
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. Does anybody, Emily, Michelle, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think she jumped out.
Yeah,
Oh,
me?
Okay.
Oh, I was gonna say, did I leave? No.
Someone signed out.
Oh, okay.
I think it
Not
was Mr.
me.
Perot.
Mr. Haroya.
Okay. No, I'm looking at the fact sheet and I actually literally just noticed 3 kind of major typos, which I mean, it just kind of underlines the rush theme of all this, which is really disappointing. Although maybe I'm just, I'm one of those people that notices a lot of the mistakes. So maybe I shouldn't take that as as part of what I have to say. But it is interesting. I draw similar parallels as far as the DEP is changing a regulation based on a TMDL, like what we saw with nitrogen, except with the nitrogen, they pretty clearly said okay, so then here's what you have to do about it. You either have to put in an IA system capable of removing nitrogen, or the whole town has to, implement this watershed management plan. And with this, I mean, I think I've read it a couple of times and I'm still trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen with it. So and
That's-
I work in a lab with all of the 3 indicator bacteria, and I'm just, it's confusing even to me. So, I don't like to push things off too long, but I absolutely understand. I do fundamentally think, more time would be better with this.
Would you be able to provide a written statement or make a statement at the hearing?
So I don't know that I'll be able to attend the hearing, and I also would want to check. I want to look a little bit into conflict of interest with this too, because my department does work with DEP, and so
Okay.
I just want to make sure I'm pretty clear on that before or
Yeah, you
figure
may
out a
be-
way.
Yeah, you may be able to say in your personal capacity.
Fair
You know what I'm
enough.
saying? Like,
Yeah.
like you
Fair enough,
clarify,
right.
as a town resident in your
Right.
personal capacity, these are your
Yes.
concerns.
Right,
But it's
fair
always
enough.
good to check with work, because you certainly don't want to put yourself in a difficult situation.
Yes, yeah, or do it through my husband or something. But the point is, yes, and Chris, even if I'm not able to attend the meeting, there is a way to provide written feedback, correct?
That is correct. And, I
Okay.
just want to ask the board, I'm going to write a letter. Do you want to sign that letter? Do you want to jointly sign it with the select board? And
Whatever you think would be more effective, Chris.
And in short, the letter is going to really focus on, just the key points on this is that, we're a stakeholder in this. We're, equally as interested, and that, this is a tremendous loss to the Commonwealth. And the crumb that they threw with the extension is just it's insulting to the people.
I'd be willing to sign it. Emily Michelle?
I want to look into it.
Okay.
As long as I can do it without conflicts for work.
Okay. Richard, what are your thoughts on this, and would you be willing to sign something like that?
I'd be willing to sign it, yes. And it is concerning such a rush job and, nothing detailed out. So it is very concerning. It does affect the town greatly. So yeah, like Chris says, it's just a crumb that they threw to think they can appease us. It's ludicrous. So yeah.
And then if you could either go to the meeting and make oral testimony, or make it doesn't have to be super elaborate. It can be the same sort of points that we're signing on the document that, Chris and the select board will present. If you can make a separate written statement, any public statement, oral statement, whether it's at the hearing or it meets the deadline, Chris will get us that deadline, is really important, because they do count the numbers. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
you still count as a resident, even though you're also a member of the Board of Health, you're also a resident of town. And,
Correct.
they look at the data, they look at, how many people responded. And I think that's one of the things that helped us greatly with the initial Title V challenge, was we had so many members of the town involved in that. And the public health department did such a fantastic job in engagement that they listened. So, letters matter.
So the other thing I'd
Agree.
like to add is that, just for, anyone that might listen to us, that when you can attend, you don't have to make the trek up to Lakeville. You can do it virtually, and we'll put that information out. And everyone only gets 3 minutes to talk.
Mhm.
And it's, as long as 3 minutes may seem, it flies by.
Does.
No matter, it's like, what do I say? To me, it's like, I don't care how many times someone says it. If something concerns you, this is your opportunity, and someone else said it, don't be bashful. Your turn to say it again. And if it's nothing more than, we need more time to digest this. This is important. Say that. This is not, this is not being pushed through with the interest of the Commonwealth. It's being pushed through with the interest of, got it done.
Checklist.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. And one of the things I've learned, through going to hearings and testifying is, write your statement out and time yourself reading the statement. And worst case scenario, you just read the statement, but at least time it ahead of time so that you know that you're meeting that 3-minute cutoff. Because they are serious about it. They will say, okay, time's up. So,
Get the hook.
which in a way, I mean, when you have lots and lots of people talking, you know what I'm saying? You can't be there for 24 hours. You know what I'm saying? Listen, especially when we had those big Title V meetings. So speaking of talking for a long time, let's see here. Does everybody feel like they've had their say on this subject matter? Okay,
Yes.
good. And Chris, everything's all set on your end? You've been able to express what you need to express?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, so if we can move forward to the old business, number 3 here, the update on the Raposo Plat 39, Lot 11, 709 Russell Mills Road, domestic animal permit where they have all the more than 30 chickens and 20 ducks and 1 peacock and 12 geese. Oh, what's
So
up with this?
This is on the board's agenda as a placeholder. He is still working through the process with conservation. So
Okay.
we'll bring this back to the board when we're further along. However, we may require that, one of the board members to sit with, I think, the commission, because what's driving the application before the commission is the proximity. It's right on top of the wetlands.
The road, yeah.
These are the
Oh,
same
oh,
wetlands that flank the Pascamanskitt River. And having 160 or 80 birds or however many he has on the permit right on top of the wetlands clearly is not helping the situation.
Okie
I
dokie.
think it's excessive. I think it's too close. And, I think it's gotta be this now, when he started with this, we didn't have this draft plan. I do think that this is something that we have to address.
Okay. And now what about the safety with the road? That's been resolved?
Today, I saw birds out in the neighbor's property and someone else did as well.
Okay. Okie dokie. Emily Michelle, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I don't think so. Not at the time.
Okay. And Richard, do you have any thoughts on this?
Just the disregard of the animals being out and about like that. Yeah, it's concerning.
Okay, Chris, so I guess we don't need a vote on this. We just gotta wait to find out what's going on with conservation. Do we know when they're meeting in conservation on this yet?
Not yet. If something serious arises, I'll certainly, can call it a public meeting on it, but, at this point, let's just, we'll continue to monitor it. This is the first time we've seen the birds out in a long time.
Oh, okay,
The last meeting, actually.
okay. Wow, and we've had a lot of rain. I know that was one of the issues last time. Well, at least that's there was a little bit of a good track record. So, okay, so any item not known 48 hours in advance?
No.
Nope, okay.
Yeah, just the next meeting. Our next meeting for, maybe July, August,
Do you want to set it up?
if we could.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, what are you thinking, Chris?
Well, what's the availability of the board members?
Thursdays at 4 seem to be working, right? Or no?
My schedule changes going forward. Mondays before 2, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays after 5:30. If we can do much earlier, I'm willing to do 8-ish in the morning.
What are the afternoon times that work for you best, Richard?
Mondays before 2 p.m. And then
But I know,
anytime
no, afternoon.
oh,
afternoon
sorry.
times, yeah.
Tuesday, Wednesday,
okay.
Thursday, 5 o'clock on.
5 o'clock on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Now I know that Emily Michelle, it's the afternoons usually easier for you.
That's correct.
Okay, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday after 5. Which of those would be best for you? I know Wednesday's not good for me.
I'd say either one. Probably Tuesdays are a little bit easier in that case. Assuming
So
this is a 5
Tuesday-
o'clock meeting, right?
This was a 4, I think.
Oh, I
Yeah, this was-
misunderstood.
Okay,
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
4 o'clock works for me, if I'm under, that 4 o'clock is the time?
I think 5 o'clock was the time for
Yeah.
Richard on
5 o'clock,
Tuesday,
okay.
Wednesday, or Thursday, yeah. Wednesdays is
okay.
not at all for me. But Tuesday or Thursday after 5 works for me. Is there a preference for you, Emily Michelle, on for Tuesday versus Thursday?
Tuesday is preferable if we're doing 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Yep, and I probably
so-
would have a hard stop at 7.
Oh my gosh, I hope we wouldn't go that long.
Okay,
Gosh.
okay.
Okay, yes, people do have to eat. Yes, okay, so,
Yes.
Chris, when do we need to meet by? What's our timeline?
So with the number of holidays, government holidays in the coming weeks, I don't see anything time sensitive immediately in our hands right now. So, I'm gonna stretch it to July. Oh, we just got an application for an animal permit today. And that's gonna be a 30-day. So we would have to meet on the 2nd.
July 2nd?
Yeah. Is that
Oh
a
my
problem?
gosh. Let me see here. Let me take a look. Let's see. That week is such a weird week. Okay, let's see here. No, July 2nd looks okay for me. What about you guys?
I'm good.
Good on my end.
So, I guess we could do July 2nd, at 5 PM. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. July 2nd, Board of Health meeting. Okay. Should we set an August meeting while we're here?
Yeah, we
I
could
don't see why not.
try the 6th. I know that's gonna push it out past a little bit.
Okay, so, Tuesday, the 6th. Okay.
I can't. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm international on Tuesday. I'm like out of the country. So unless you really want to do it
No.
without me, which you certainly can, but
No, you don't want to do that.
July
Chris, if we
30th?
go. Oh, I can't do that date. I'm sorry. What about, Chris, you're off for that, you're out of international for that whole week, so Thursday the 8th is out too? Yeah, Emily,
Sorry.
Michelle, Thursday the 8th,
sorry, let me check what time we get back.
Okay.
Sorry.
it's okay.
Sorry, bear with me.
Vacation is always hard.
Yeah,
You know?
I know, right? I could try and call in. That might be tight. I mean, if something goes amiss, I'm not going to make it. But again, if this is what we're faced with, if you want to set it for that, then I'll try and call in. You can, but yeah, I can't confidently say yes to Thursday the 8th.
What about Thursday, July 25th? That would buy us a little bit of time to get through August.
So yeah,
Thursday,
Tuesday,
July
yeah, and then what we can always do if there isn't anything, then we, time sensitive at that time, because July can be a time when things slow down for a few weeks. After the 4th, we can always push something out into, the middle of August. But yeah, the 25th I think would be good.
It's Thursday, July 25th at 5, okay for both you, Richard and Emily Michelle?
Fine with me.
Okay, pending possible cancellation, but at least we've got that identified. Awesome, that's dynamite, and that will get us through the end of August, which is wonderful. When hopefully at that point in time.
I've got a conflict on the 25th. I was looking at June.
Oh, okay, sorry. And what about the 23rd?
Yeah, the 23rd would work.
Does the 23rd work for you, Richard and Emily?
It does.
Yes.
Okay, 5 PM on July 23rd. At least that way there buys us a little bit of time. Okay, and so we don't really need to go into September, Chris? Or should
No,
we?
Let's just keep it like that, and then we'll figure out
Okay.
August. When we get to, we'll do August, September, October, hopefully.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay.
Okay.
And then just a little bit of additional news here. I'm not sure if you, Richard and Emily Michelle heard, but at town meeting, I did attend town meeting on Tuesday. I did speak. It wasn't necessarily critical for me to speak because town meeting was very much against making the Board of Assessors an appointed board, and the Board of Health an appointed board, and the Board of Assessors was Article 29, we were Article 30. But I wanted to take that opportunity to just express that, you know, keeping the Board of Health as an elected body is very, very important, because then we answer to the people. Okay, and you know, if we're appointed, you know, it just removes that direct channel of the public being able to contact us and say, I don't like this, or this needs to be done, or just having us have to answer to our fellow residents, you know, as elected people. I also wanted to take the opportunity to give kudos to our public health department, to Chris and the team, because they are phenomenal. And one of the things that they were saying in the charter committee is that they wanted to make these boards appointed because they wanted to open the pool wider to be able to bring in more expertise. Okay, and not have people have to be bothered with running for office. And I did mention that I felt that Chris and his team have the expertise that we need. And if they don't, we can certainly get it. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to give some applause to our phenomenal public health team. We're really very, very lucky to have such a dedicated group of people. And I mean, they're small group of people, and they do a tremendous amount. So I just wanted to give you that feedback that we'll be having elections next year. So that will be good.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything that they need to say or want to say, or? Okay, so I guess we can do a motion to adjourn with a roll call. So can we have a motion to adjourn?
I move to
Motion.
adjourn the Board of Health meeting.
I
And
second that motion.
Awesome, fantastic. Michelle Keith votes yes. Emily Michelle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes, and Richard, you get the last word. How do you vote?
I vote yes, and thank you.
Fantastic. Well, everybody enjoy. I think we're not going to see each other. Oh no, we will see each other before 4th of July. Okie dokie. So enjoy the rest of June. Hopefully we'll have more sunny weekends like this weekend coming up, which is going to be fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks,
and the team.
everyone.
Everyone,
Take
thank
care.
you.